Hey folks, tonight we're heading into one of the most romanticised, misunderstood, and deeply unpleasant periods in American history. A time of muskets, mud, amputations, and wildly unregulated facial hair. That's right, we're going straight into the heart of the American Civil War. Now you might think you've got the picture already. Cannons roaring, flags waving, some epic music swelling in the background while brave men charge across fields like noble heroes in sepia-toned oil paintings. But what you're probably not picturing is the stench, the starvation, the explosive diarrhea, and the very real possibility that your own rifle will maim you before the enemy ever gets the chance. It isn't the Civil War you saw in that one Ken Burns documentary while dozing off in high school. This is the real one. The itchy, infected, lice-infested version, where the number one cause of death wasn't bullets, but bacteria. Where honour and duty often took a backseat to trench foot, rancid bacon and mass graves dug too shallow. So before you get comfortable, take a second to hit that like button if you enjoy content that makes you never want to time travel again. Maybe subscribe if you're into slow descents into historical misery. And feel free to comment where you're listening from. Unless you're in a place with central heating, a working toilet and clean socks. In which case you might want to thank your ancestors for surviving all this so you wouldn't have to. Now dim the lights, maybe put on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's begin. Because you, unfortunate soul, have just been transported to the year 1863. You've been drafted into the Union Army. You have no training, no idea what's going on, and no idea what cholera smells like. But don't worry, you're about to find out. You've just been drafted. Congratulations. Not because you're a skilled soldier or a brave patriot. No, you're here because your name got pulled out of a wooden drum in a city office that smells like ink, sweat, and desperation. You didn't volunteer. Maybe you were just trying to buy a loaf of bread, or walk home from work, or exist within city limits while male and breathing. Too bad. You're going to war now. Doesn't matter if you've never touched a gun, or if you're 19 and think diarrhea is just a temporary inconvenience. In the eyes of the United States government, you are now a soldier. And you'll stay that way until you die, desert, or somehow live long enough to walk home without your original limbs. You arrive at the Enlistment Centre, which is just a converted warehouse, with a man shouting instructions and another man holding a bucket of ink-stained pens. You sign a piece of paper you didn't read, probably with your name misspelled. You're handed a uniform that looks like it's already been worn by 3 other guys, 2 of whom didn't make it. It smells like sweat, mildew, and sorrow. The boots aren't even the same size. You mention this, and someone tells you to shove newspaper in the big one and cut your toenails for the small one. That's the official fitting process. Your medical examination is not so much an exam as it is a quick glance to confirm you have most of your fingers and are currently upright. You could be missing a lung, deaf in one ear, or actively bleeding from the nose. As long as you can hold a rifle and don't collapse immediately, you pass. Someone writes "fit for duty" on a scrap of paper. You've just been cleared for battle by a man who once diagnosed smallpox as probably nerves. You're handed your gear, which consists of a wool uniform, a knapsack that smells like rat pee, a bedroll that might actually be a mouldy tarp, a canteen that leaks, and a haversack with a strap that cuts into your shoulder like a saw. Inside the bag is your first real introduction to military cuisine. Hardtack. It's not bread. It's a brick of flour and water, baked until all moisture and joy are removed. You're also given a small cloth sack of beans, some salt pork that's more fat than meat, and coffee grounds so bitter they may have been scraped off the bottom of a locomotive. You ask how to cook it all. No one answers. You figure it out later, probably over a fire fueled with fence posts you were told not to burn. You spend your first night in a training camp, which is just a muddy field surrounded by tents that don't close, guys who snore like oxen, and latrines that overflow by noon. Your bunk is a pile of straw that smells like urine and moves when you poke it. You try to sleep, but someone nearby is coughing hard enough to shake the tent pole, and you hear rats chewing on something under your blanket. You make a mental note to stop being surprised by any of this. That skill will come in handy. There's no real training schedule. Some days you stand in a field practicing drills under a sun that turns your wool coat into a portable oven. Other days you're digging ditches, moving supplies, or just waiting for someone to yell your name. You quickly learn that discipline is random, hygiene is optional, and disease spreads faster than gossip. By the end of your first week, you know at least 3 people with dysentery, 1 with typhoid, and another guy who just quietly disappeared after a coughing fit turned into blood and silence. Bathing is rare. The camp has a river nearby, but it's downstream from the latrines, so stepping into it is basically volunteering to dissolve from the inside out. Most people just give up on bathing altogether. You stop noticing the smell after a while. Your skin becomes a greasy, gritty membrane that clings to the inside of your uniform like a second, slightly angrier body. Lice are a fact of life. You learn to scratch discreetly. Everyone else is scratching too. You're issued a musket, which is older than you are. It's a muzzle loader, which means that to fire a single shot, you have to pour powder down the barrel, stuff a lead ball down after it, ram it with a rod, pour some more powder in the pan, cock the hammer, aim, and then pray it doesn't misfire. If you do it wrong, it explodes in your hand. If you do it right, there's a 30% chance it still misfires because the powder got damp or someone packed the cartridges too loose. You're taught how to load and fire in formation, which is basically lining up shoulder to shoulder and hoping that at least half the guys don't shoot themselves or each other in the back of the head. The first time you hear cannon fire, it feels like the sky cracked open. You drop to the ground instinctively. A veteran next to you laughs and tells you to get used to it. "They ain't even aiming at us yet," he says, picking his teeth with a piece of straw. You realise he only has 4 teeth left. You start to wonder if that's going to be you in 3 months. Not the calm part, just the dental part. You're marched for days, not hours. Days. Dozens of miles over dirt roads, across creeks, up hills, and through forests that seem designed to trip and kill you with every root and branch. Your feet swell. Your boots blister. You drink from whatever water source you can find. That includes puddles, streams, and sometimes just rain off a leaf. Your canteen tastes like rust and algae. You drink it anyway. You learn to walk through pain. There's no stopping for injuries unless a bone is poking through skin. Your bowels betray you within the first week. Something in the beans, or maybe the water, or maybe just the stress of eating food prepared by a man who doesn't know what boiling means. You don't know what it is exactly, but it hits hard. One moment you're fine. The next, you're sprinting to the latrine trench, holding your stomach and praying no one's using it. Spoiler, someone is. There's always someone using it. Privacy doesn't exist. You learn to squat in the woods, wiping with leaves, and trying not to sit on a nest of angry ants. You hear someone vomiting in the bushes nearby. You both nod without speaking. Letters from home arrive sporadically. When they do, they're read out loud, passed around, and sometimes cried over. If you can write, you try to send something back, but paper is rare, and stamps even rarer. Ink might be soot and spit. You end up scribbling something on the back of an old supply form, using a sharpened stick and someone else's blood-stained handkerchief as a blotter. You give it to a courier, who may or may not get shot before he reaches a post office. Either way, you've done your part. Discipline is enforced with punishments that range from extra duty to being tied to a wagon wheel in the sun for hours. You watch a man get whipped for stealing coffee. Another gets drummed out of camp for falling asleep on guard duty. His head is shaved, his uniform torn, and a sign hung around his neck calling him a coward. He doesn't look at anyone as he's marched out. You wonder what happened to him afterward. You try not to think too hard about it. Rain comes and stays. Everything turns to mud. Your tent collapses in the middle of the night and you wake up soaked, shivering, and chewing on a beetle that wandered into your mouth. You try to dry your socks over a fire, but they just catch flame and melt into a black mess. You wear them anyway the next day. There's no choice. You've already walked them into your skin. Blisters become open sores. Open sores become infected. Infected feet get wrapped in rags and ignored until they smell wrong. At that point, someone might look at them. If they're really bad, the solution is amputation. If they're just kind of bad, the solution is walk it off. Your commander is 28 years old, and he's already seen 3 battles. He doesn't sleep, he chews on tobacco constantly, and when he gives orders, they sound like regrets. He's nice to you once, during a break in marching. Offers you half a biscuit that's older than some states. You eat it anyway. It's the best thing you've tasted in weeks. You see your first dead soldier 2 weeks in. He's face down in the mud, pants down, rifle stuck under one arm like he died in the middle of a sentence. You don't ask what happened. No one does. Someone takes his boots. Another guy grabs his belt. His body is left where it fell. By the next morning it's gone. Whether buried or eaten, you're not sure. When someone dies in camp, they're wrapped in a blanket and carried to the edge of the field. Sometimes they're buried, sometimes there's no time. The smell becomes normal. The flies never leave. A guy in your tent coughs blood into his shirt for 2 days straight. You pretend to be asleep. You don't want to catch whatever he has, even though you already did. You stop asking questions. You stop writing the date. You stop expecting things to get better. Every day starts with shouting, mud, and coughing. Every night ends with the sound of someone groaning in their sleep, or crying quietly, or just not waking up. You're standing in the morning light, which is less like sunlight and more like a dim spotlight on a stage you never auditioned for. Your eyes are crusted from sleep and whatever infection you picked up yesterday. You slept in your uniform again because there's no other option, and peeling it off in the middle of the night would have meant freezing. You don't change clothes. You don't even dream about changing clothes. You just exist inside the same sour, sweat-stained wool day after day until it becomes a part of you. And not metaphorically. It's literally fused to your skin in certain places now. The uniform you were issued was made for a man with different measurements, probably a completely different body type altogether. The trousers are too short, the jacket cuts under your arms, and the stitching along the back is pulling apart like it's trying to escape the responsibility of being your coat. It's dyed blue, or what used to be blue, before it was exposed to rain, fire smoke, and the general despair of military life. Now it's more of a blotchy grey that smells like wool, mildew, and hopelessness. Wool was chosen because it's durable. That's the idea, at least. What that means in practice is that your entire body is wrapped in fabric that was designed to trap heat and moisture, and never, under any circumstances, let go. You're basically wearing a portable sweat lodge, the kind that doesn't help you find spiritual enlightenment. Just rashes, and a growing hatred for the concept of fabric. The wool soaks in everything. Sweat, mud, grease, piss if you slip the wrong way during latrine duty. It holds onto the scent like it's afraid of being clean. There's no washing machine, no soap, unless you count a sliver of something that smells like chalk and feels like sandpaper. Washing your uniform means boiling a pot of water, scrubbing each piece by hand, and waiting for it to dry, which can take days in humid camp conditions. Most people don't bother. After a week, everyone smells the same anyway. It's a collective stink. You stop noticing. Mostly. Your undershirt, if you even got one, is a piece of thin cotton that's already tearing along the collar. The pants itch constantly. There's no lining, no comfortable waistband. Just a scratchy drawstring and some loose buttons that gave up their will to live back around mile 5 of the last march. You keep hiking them up, out of reflex, knowing they're going to sag again. Every step rubs your thighs raw. After a while, you just accept that walking hurts. And then there are the shoes. They call them brogans. Low-cut leather things that look like they were designed by a drunk blacksmith. There's no left and right, just 2 mirror image foot prisons that you're expected to break in by wearing them continuously until your feet conform to their shape or die trying. The soles are made of thick leather, nailed together with wooden pegs that start falling out the first time you walk through a stream, which you will, often. Your socks are wool too, not soft wool, not the cosy, fuzzy kind you buy at stores today. These are scratchy, thick, and shaped like they were knit by someone who'd never actually seen a human foot. They absorb sweat instantly, and then hold it hostage for hours. After a day's march, they feel like wet sponges strapped to your ankles. If you're lucky, you've got a spare pair in your pack. If you're unlucky, you rotate them out with the hope that letting one set air out in your bag counts as cleaning. It doesn't. But that's what you tell yourself. Blisters appear fast. You get one on the heel, then one under the ball of your foot. They pop, then reform. Blood mixes with mud in your socks. You feel the squish with every step. You ignore it. Everyone else does. Some wrap their feet in rags. Some just stop talking about their feet altogether. You learn to walk differently. You lean forward more. You take short, stiff steps, like a man trying not to burst into flames. And the friction is constant. The chafing starts under your arms. That's where the jacket rubs. Then it moves to your thighs. Then the worst part, your groin. You're sweating all day, the wool doesn't breathe, and everything down there becomes a zone of friction, heat, and slow degradation. The skin peels, then it cracks, then it bleeds. You try walking with your legs farther apart. Someone makes a joke about it. You don't respond. You're too busy trying not to scream. There's powder burn from your rifle. The black powder used in your musket isn't clean. It leaves residue, oily, sticky soot that clings to your cuffs, your chest, your face. After a few volleys during a drill, your uniform is smudged with carbon. You look like you've been rolling in chimney ash. You don't even notice anymore. You wipe your face with your sleeve, and it just smears the grime deeper. Buttons break. Threads snap. Your coat flaps open when it's supposed to be buttoned up. You patch it with whatever you find. Wire, twine, bits of old canvas. Nothing that matches, nothing that lasts. Sewing kits aren't standard issue. You trade a spoon for a needle. It bends the first time you use it. You sew anyway, because it's either that, or have your uniform fall off in the middle of inspection. Which has happened. Probably to the same guy who hasn't bathed in a month, and thinks spitting on his hands counts as hygiene. Your hat is a kepi, a stiff, flat-topped cap that looks official, but does almost nothing to protect you from rain, sun, or common sense. It traps heat like a stovepipe. When it rains, it soaks up water and droops into your eyes. When it's sunny, it offers just enough shade to remind you of how hot you are. You consider using it as a bowl or a pillow, or throwing it in the river. But it's regulation, so you keep wearing it, even though it smells like the inside of a boot left on a fire. There's no standard issue jacket for cold weather. If the temperature drops, you layer. You scavenge from the dead. You wrap yourself in whatever you can find. Blankets, coats from fallen comrades, even stolen Confederate uniforms if no one's looking. No one cares about colours when you're freezing. You stuff newspapers into your sleeves. You button your jacket up to the throat and tie it with a length of rope you found in a ditch. That's fashion now. Rain doesn't stop just because you're not dressed for it. You march through it. You sleep in it. You eat in it. Your wool uniform doubles its weight when soaked. You walk hunched forward, your shoulders dragging under 10 pounds of cold, wet misery. It doesn't dry overnight. Nothing does. You wake up the next day and put it back on. Still damp, still heavy. The smell changes from sweat to mildew. You try not to breathe through your nose. When you finally sit down after a long march, the first thing you do is unbutton your trousers and lean forward so the air can reach the worst of the chafed areas. It doesn't help. It just confirms that everything hurts. You pick at a blister on your heel and the skin comes off with your sock. You stuff the bloody fabric back into your shoe and pretend it didn't happen. The guy next to you is doing the same thing. No one speaks. There are no inspections for comfort. No supply officers asking how the wool feels against your rash. If your jacket's falling apart, that's your problem. If your boots don't fit, cut the toes out. If your pants split, tie them shut with a belt. If you get gangrene from wearing the same sweat-drenched uniform for weeks at a time, someone will make a note on a piece of paper that will be filed away and forgotten in a tent that might burn down tomorrow. You look at the officers, the ones with clean gloves, actual overcoats, and boots that match. You think about stealing their uniforms, just for a day, not for status, just for the fit. But that fantasy dies fast. The quartermaster is 3 tenths over, and has already lost count of how many men he's issued the wrong size pants to. He won't help you. You stopped asking. Eventually the uniform becomes a skin you don't remember putting on. The boots, part of your anatomy. The pain, just background noise behind the hunger and the fear. You forget what clean clothes feel like. You can't imagine the sensation of cotton that doesn't make you itch, or boots that don't smell like wet meat. You dream of it sometimes, a fresh shirt, a dry pair of socks, but you wake up to the same damp wool, the same chafed thighs, the same unrelenting rub of discomfort that follows you everywhere. You get dressed without thinking. The buttons fall off, the seams tear, the cuffs fray. You fix what you can, ignore what you can't, and keep moving, because no one cares if you're uncomfortable. No one's writing home about the guy whose jacket was a little too tight. And if you stop walking, if you stop moving, your uniform isn't going to be your biggest problem anymore. And now that everything itches, pinches, and bleeds when you walk, it's time to go find breakfast. You wake up in a tent, if you can call it that. It's canvas pulled tight over wooden poles, fraying at the seams, sagging in the middle from last night's rain. There's no floor, just earth. Mud if it rained, dust if it didn't. Your blanket is damp. Your breath fogs the air, and something just scurried over your foot. You tell yourself it was a beetle. It wasn't. It was a rat. One of many. You shift to sit up, and immediately regret it. Every joint cracks like a brittle twig. Your back is soaked in sweat despite the cold, and your shirt has fused to your skin in a way that suggests it's become more of a parasite than a garment. Your boots are still on. You slept in them again. Taking them off risks not being able to get them back on, or worse, discovering what new shape your feet have taken overnight. You're not alone in this tent. You never are. It's designed for 4 men, but there are 12 of you crammed inside. You've learned not to care about personal space. You're sleeping shoulder to shoulder, foot to face, spooned up with strangers because body heat is the only thing standing between you and hypothermia. You no longer flinch when someone rolls over and drools on your neck. You just turn your face the other way and try to go back to sleep. Names stop mattering after the first week. You're surrounded by men named Eli, Samuel, and Jebediah, sometimes 2 or 3 of each. One of the Elis snores like a freight train. Another has a chronic cough that hasn't gone away since he joined up. You think he might be dying, but he keeps getting up every morning, so maybe not. Maybe it's just what breathing sounds like now. One guy never speaks, just sits there, sharpening a knife that he never uses. Another sleeps with one eye open and talks about a mule he left behind, like it was his wife. Someone's always humming. Someone's always farting. Someone's always praying under his breath like he's trying to bribe God for an early discharge. You don't ask questions. You don't want to know the answers. There's no privacy, no curtains, no moment to yourself. If you want to change your shirt, you do it in front of everyone. If you want to relieve yourself in the middle of the night, you grab the designated bucket and hope you don't trip over someone's legs in the dark. If you snore too loudly, someone kicks you. If you talk in your sleep, someone writes it down and makes fun of you for it the next day. Secrets don't survive here. Neither does dignity. You hear rats at night. Not 1 or 2, dozens. They live in the walls of the supply tent, under the cook wagon, in your bedding. You've seen them crawl over sleeping bodies. One got into your rations once. You still ate it. You had no choice. You just scraped the droppings off the top and chewed faster. Some of them are bold. They don't wait until you sleep. They run between your legs while you sit. One tried to take your sock. You let it. It was probably cleaner now anyway. The lice are worse. Rats at least wait until you're unconscious. Lice are there all day, every day. They live in your shirt seams, your waistband, Your hair if you still have any. You scratch until your skin bleeds. You find tiny white eggs on your cuffs and collar. You've stopped caring. Everyone's infested. You make jokes about it now. Mine are getting names, someone says. Thinking of raising them for the fair. You try boiling your shirts. Doesn't work. The lice just hide deeper. You hold it over a fire, burns the fabric. The lice survive. You end up flicking them off one by one until the sun goes down, and even then they come back. You itch while you eat. You itch while you march. You itch in places you didn't know could itch. Someone tells you to shave your body. You laugh. You don't even have a proper knife. And even if you did, you're not sure where your skin ends and the bites begin. Every few nights, someone has a nightmare. They sit up screaming, gasping, swinging at shadows. No one says anything. We all hear it. Nobody mentions it the next morning. That's the rule. You ignore it, they ignore it, and eventually the screaming just becomes part of the background noise. Along with the rats chewing on biscuit crates and the guy in the corner crying into his blanket. The smell in the tent is indescribable. It's sweat, mould, rotting fabric, dried blood, unwashed feet, and something else. Something sour and human and constant. You stop smelling it after a while, the same way you stop noticing the taste of spoiled meat if you eat it enough. It's in your nose, it's on your clothes, it's who you are now. You learn to sleep light. Any noise could be a rat in your bedding, a fight breaking out outside, or someone throwing up from bad coffee and stress. Once, a man died in his sleep 2 tents over. No one noticed until morning. He looked peaceful. That's how bad it's gotten. A dead man looked better than most of the living. Space is limited, so arguments break out over everything. Someone moves your blanket, someone eats your cracker, someone touches your tin cup without asking. Suddenly, fists are flying. It's over in seconds. No one wins. Someone bleeds, someone swears, and then everything goes back to normal. You think about getting out of the tent sometimes. Maybe sleeping under a tree. Then it rains again and you remember why you stay. You've memorized everyone's breathing patterns. You can tell who's sick by how they wheeze. You know who sleeps on their back, who twitches, who mutters old Bible verses under their breath. You know which guy grinds his teeth, and which one talks about his girl back home until he falls asleep. They're your family now, in the way that rats in a sinking ship are family. You're all just trying to survive until the next sunrise. Once, you found a snake curled in someone's boots. Another time, someone woke up with a centipede crawling across his chest. You just brushed it off and kept lying there. Getting up would have meant putting your feet on the cold ground. And honestly, the centipede wasn't the worst thing that had touched you that week. The tent leaks. Always. There's no patching it. You tie it with rope, prop it with sticks, and hope the next storm doesn't collapse the whole thing on top of you. If it does, you'll just sleep under the mess. Dry is a fantasy. Warm is a memory. You settle for less wet than usual, and call that a good night. One of the Eli's snores so loud you hear it through your dreams. Another Eli hoards crackers and thinks no one knows. Everyone knows. No one cares. You're all too tired to fight about crumbs. The guy who used to complain the most stopped talking entirely last week. He just stares now. You don't ask him what he's thinking. You already know. This is home now. A sagging canvas box full of filth, farts, infestations, and the last traces of who you used to be. You don't decorate, you don't clean. You just exist in it, waiting for the next march, the next shout, the next miserable thing that's going to happen. And when the order comes to pack up and move, you don't hesitate. You roll your blanket, shoulder your bag, and crawl out into the grey dawn, already itching, already hungry, already exhausted. 'Cause you've got another full day ahead of you, and it starts with a meal that technically qualifies as food. You're up before the sun, not because you're eager, but because someone shouted, someone tripped over your leg, or someone outside is already arguing about coffee grounds. You sit up slowly, joints protesting, spine creaking, eyes barely open. Your breath clouds the air. Your blanket is damp. Your fingers feel like they belong to a corpse. Breakfast is not being cooked. That's too generous a word. Breakfast is being assembled. Somewhere, someone is crouched over a tiny campfire fueled by twigs, damp wood, and desperation. The smoke is choking everyone within a 5-yard radius. A blackened tin pot hangs crookedly over the flames. Inside is a sludgy mix of boiled water and something that once resembled coffee. It smells like regret and old leather. You make your way over, stepping carefully to avoid puddles, latrine runoff and rats. You join the half-circle of other men holding blackened tin cups, waiting their turn like it matters. When the ladle comes your way, you hold out your cup, and someone dumps in exactly enough to stain the bottom. It's not hot. It's not good. It's not even entirely liquid. There's a floating oil slick on top, and a grainy bitterness that clings to your teeth like soot. You drink it anyway. Then comes the food. You dig into your haversack and pull out your morning ration of hardtack. It looks like a biscuit if a biscuit had been designed by a prison architect and fired in a kiln until all joy had been eliminated. It's square, off-white, and has little holes punched into it, not for decoration, but to let air escape during baking, so it doesn't explode like your digestive tract will later. The hardtack is hard, not chewy hard, not stale bread hard. Actual break your teeth hard. You bang it on the edge of your cup, and it sounds like wood. You try to bite it and feel your molars threaten to mutiny. Most men either soak it in their coffee, which turns both into a gritty paste, or bang it with the butt of their rifle until it crumbles into edible shards. You go the smashing route. It sprays crumbs everywhere, some of which land on your lap, some of which get claimed by ants, and a few that end up as someone's second breakfast. There's usually weevils. You get used to that. The trick is to hold the hardtack close to your face and watch for movement. If it wriggles, you pick the bugs out. If it doesn't, you eat it and hope whatever was in there is dead now. Some guys don't bother. They just chew through, crunching the bugs with the rest of it. Protein, they say. You don't laugh. It's not funny anymore. If you're lucky, and that's a big if, you might have salt pork. It comes in slabs. Thick, fatty, slimy slabs that smell like brine and rot. The fat outweighs the meat 10 to 1. You try slicing it thin, frying it over the fire if you can get a pan, or just gnawing on it raw if you can't wait. It's so salty it puckers your cheeks. You chew through gristle, swallow grease, and feel it sitting in your stomach like a brick of regret. Later, it'll remind you why nobody runs after breakfast. Beans are a maybe. If someone found a sack of them in the last supply shipment, you might get a scoop. Barely cooked, half-hardened, burned on the bottom, and undercooked on top. They taste like whatever the pot was last used for. Sometimes ash, sometimes gun oil. You don't ask, you eat. There are days when you don't even get that. Days when the wagon didn't come, the firewood ran out, or the quartermaster is still arguing with a local farmer over some stolen chickens. On those days, breakfast is just water. Or worse, the promise of breakfast later. You wait. It doesn't come. You go hungry. Again. Eating is not a communal joy. It's a grim transaction between you and whatever you can shovel into your mouth fast enough to not share. There's no conversation. Just chewing, coughing, and the occasional grunt when someone drops their only spoon into the fire. You don't offer yours. Spoons are gold. You'd fight over one if it came down to it. You've seen it happen. Sometimes someone tries to get creative. They crumble hardtack into their coffee, mash it into a gluey lump, and call it hardtack pudding. One guy brought molasses from home and drizzled it over a cracker like he was hosting a dinner party. Someone else once tried to roast their salt pork on a stick like marshmallows. The stick caught fire. The pork fell into the mud. He ate it anyway. Butter doesn't exist here. Sugar is a fantasy. Fruit is a memory. Milk might arrive in a tin once every few weeks and taste like chalk mixed with rust. If you see something green, don't eat it. It's probably mould or something trying to be alive again. Fresh vegetables? Not unless you find a dying onion under the supply cart. Most of your vitamins come from chewing on leather or whatever passed through the last guy's ration bag. You start noticing the symptoms. Gums that bleed for no reason, teeth that wiggle, cuts that won't heal. Your skin turns a weird colour. Your joints ache more than usual. Someone says the word scurvy. You laugh. Then you realise they weren't joking. You dream about food. Real food. Eggs. Butter. A slice of bread that doesn't try to cut the inside of your mouth like broken glass. You think about your mother's cooking, even if it was terrible. At least it was soft. At least it came with a plate. Every so often, the officers eat something different. You see them with real coffee, canned peaches, even bacon. Real bacon. Thick, smoky, pink. You stare at it like a man watching a ship leave the harbour with all his dreams on board. You consider deserting for a bite. You consider murder. You go back to your hardtack. Sometimes, a chaplain or local volunteer brings food. Fresh bread, biscuits, actual meat. You wolf it down so fast you burn your mouth. The taste stays with you for days. The longing stays longer. But it never lasts. The next morning, you're back to smashing weevil biscuits and slurping sludge out of a tin cup. Your body doesn't thank you. Your stomach cramps. You burp up grease. You pass wind that makes nearby men gag. You wake up in the night with gut pain that feels like you've been stabbed by a bayonet made of spoiled beans. You learn to stop complaining. Everyone's suffering. Everyone's starving slowly. The human body wasn't made to run on cracker bricks and pork fat. But you eat. Because there's no choice. Because there's marching ahead. Because someone already shouted that you're behind schedule. Because the man next to you just finished his coffee and is now throwing up behind a bush. And because soon you'll be walking for hours in full gear with a gut full of grease, soaked socks, and absolutely no bathroom in sight. You're not standing in formation. You're not preparing to march. You're already marching. The moment you're done choking down your bug-riddled hardtack, someone yells, and the entire camp starts shifting like a miserable, underfed organism. You shoulder your pack, which by now feels like an extension of your spine, and start walking. No one tells you where, that's not your concern. Orders flow downhill, and you're buried at the bottom. Your feet start hurting within the first hour. That's the good news. At least you still have feeling. The bad news is that the road ahead stretches for miles, and the only thing heavier than your gear is the silence, broken occasionally by coughing, muttered curses, or the snapping sound of someone's back finally giving up. There's no smooth terrain. You're not on cobblestone paths or scenic routes. You're on dirt. Mud if it rained, dust if it didn't. If you're in the south, it's thick clay that clings to your boots until you're hauling 5 extra pounds per foot. If you're up north, it's frozen ridges and broken gravel that shred your soles. Either way, you're walking over whatever nature didn't have time to flatten. Pace isn't optional. You move with the column, or you get left behind. You try keeping up, your gear bouncing with every step, canteen clinking against your side, bedroll flapping like a useless tail. Your musket digs into your shoulder. The strap's worn thin and cuts deeper each hour. You shift it to the other side. It still hurts. There's no break after an hour, or 2, or 3. You stop only when the officers do, which could be whenever they remember you exist. You don't ask how much farther. No one answers. They don't know either. You're marching until sunset, or until someone drops, or until a supply cart breaks another wheel, and the whole column collapses into chaos. The sun gets hotter. You start sweating under your wool jacket, then you start steaming. Your shirt clings to your back like wet parchment. Salt crusts your collar. Your hat traps the heat and bakes your skull. You take it off. The sun blinds you. You put it back on. There's no winning. You're cooking no matter what you do. Then come the hills. There's always hills. Up and down, over and over, like the terrain's trying to punish you for existing. Uphill, your calves burn. Downhill, your knees buckle. The pack on your back swings with each step, throwing your balance off just enough to make you stumble every 20 feet. You stop using your legs the way you used to. You walk like a machine, broken, limping, resentful. Someone ahead trips. They hit the ground hard. You step around them. So does everyone else. There's no ceremony, no helping hand. If they can't get up, they get left behind. Later, someone will say they collapsed from heat, or dysentery, or exhaustion. It all ends the same. Your canteen runs dry. You rationed it carefully, but the heat wins. You sip the last mouthful and stare at the empty tin. You won't get more until you reach a stream or a refill point. Could be hours, could be tomorrow. Your tongue starts to stick to the roof of your mouth. You consider sucking the sweat from your collar. You've seen it done. When a break finally comes, it's not relaxing. You don't sit on grass. You collapse in dirt. Your legs cramp the moment you stop moving. You stretch out and your back seizes. Someone next to you pulls off their boots to check the damage. Their socks are soaked in blood. A toenail is missing. They shrug, wrap a rag around it, and put the boot back on. You look away. Not out of disgust. Out of understanding. Blisters don't stay blisters. They burst, peel, and infect. The pus mixes with dirt and seeps into your socks. You feel every pebble, every shift in the earth. You stop limping because it draws attention. You stop complaining because no one cares. You stop hoping for relief. You just keep moving. The ground doesn't care about your morale. Marching through towns isn't better. The roads are tighter. Civilians line the edges, staring. Some cheer. Some don't. You don't wave. You don't smile. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other, hoping no one throws anything. You smell the bread baking in houses you'll never enter. You see women handing water to officers who don't pass it back. You see kids staring at your boots like they're watching The Walking Dead. Bridges collapse. Wagons tip. Horses die mid-step. Everything is slower than it should be. You get stuck waiting behind a supply train for an hour while your legs cramp and your water runs out again. Someone gets impatient and tries to push ahead. They get shouted back. You all move like cattle, branded, herded, forgotten. Rain turns everything to sludge. Mud up to your ankles. You lose your footing every few steps. Your pack drags behind you like a wet corpse. You slip once, land flat, and have to crawl to the side just to stand again. Everything you own is soaked. Again. You try to shake it off. Doesn't help. You smell like rot and defeat. There are night marches too. You thought they'd give you rest? They don't. Sometimes they decide you're moving under cover of darkness. The logic doesn't matter. You march by lantern light or no light at all, stumbling through forests and fields, hoping you're not stepping on anything living. You hear owls, wolves, gunshots in the distance. You keep going, and you never know when it ends. You could march 20 miles just to dig trenches, or keep going past the town you thought was the stop, or reach a camp that's just a burned out grove with no supplies and a dozen bloated corpses to bury. There's no reward, no sense of arrival. Just the same gear, the same pain, the same lice, now in a slightly different location. When you finally stop, your legs keep twitching. You sit and feel them shaking. Your knees pop when you try to stand again. You feel older than you are. You look older too. The grime makes everyone grey. The fatigue pulls your face down like gravity is giving up on subtlety. And then the officer says you're moving again tomorrow. At dawn, you lie down in your wet blanket, eat whatever's left in your bag, and try to sleep while your calves spasm and your feet throb like they've been beaten with hammers. You stare up at the tent ceiling, or the clouds, or nothing at all, and you wonder how much farther you can walk before something breaks that won't heal. The morning doesn't start so much as it happens to you. You open your eyes to a sky that doesn't care, a breeze that smells like wet wool and latrines, and someone nearby coughing like they're trying to evict a lung. You stretch just enough to remember your back hurts in 3 places, then pull your gear together with the efficiency of someone who's done this too many times to waste energy pretending it's new. You crouch by the fire pit. The embers are almost gone. Someone's trying to reignite it with damp twigs and whatever's left of yesterday's coffee grounds. The smell is a mix of scorched iron and bad timing. You offer your canteen lid to scoop some in. The liquid inside is mostly hot, mostly brown, and entirely disappointing. It tastes like someone soaked a burnt boot in dirty water. You drink it anyway. You need something in your stomach, even if it's just disappointment. Nearby, a man screams. You don't jump. You've heard that tone before. Someone dropped something, or slipped, or maybe tried to put his boots on and realised the blisters from yesterday have now fused with his socks. It's not even the worst thing you'll hear today. Turns out it's a toe. Or more accurately, it was a toe. One of the newer boys tried to warm his feet too close to the fire last night. Didn't realise he was burning them until morning. They peeled the sock off and the toe came with it. Blackened, bloated, limp. Someone makes a joke about sending it home as a souvenir. No one laughs. The boy doesn't say anything. He just stares at the stump like it betrayed him. Someone gives him a strip of cloth. He ties it on. That's the medical treatment. You clean your musket next. Or try to. The thing's been with you since enlistment, and it shows. It's a muzzle-loading, percussion-cap rifled musket, which sounds impressive until you realise it takes roughly 20 seconds to load. And that's if you're not panicking or trying to do it while someone's screaming in your ear. The barrel's clogged with residue from black powder. Every time you fire, it spits soot and smoke like a dying chimney. Every time you don't fire, you wonder if it's going to misfire anyway, just out of spite. You wipe down the lock plate, swab the bore with a rag wrapped around your ramrod, and try to ignore the fact that the trigger's sticking. Someone says you should file it down. You nod like that's helpful. You don't have a file. You don't have a proper cloth. You're cleaning your weapon with a strip of shirt you tore off 2 weeks ago. You check your ammunition. Paper cartridges. Each one holds a mini-A ball and a pre-measured powder charge. You tear it open with your teeth, pour the powder down the barrel, then stuff the paper and ball in, ram it down with a rod, slap on a cap, and fire. If you do it right, it works. If you do it wrong, you get a backfire, a jam, or a flash in the pan with no shot. You've seen all three. Once, someone mispacked his charge and the barrel split. Took 2 fingers with it. He still carries the gun. Just uses the other hand now. Misfires are common. Too much moisture in the air. The cap doesn't ignite. Or maybe the powder was packed badly. Maybe the gun's just tired. You line up to practice volleys and you hear it. Pop, pop, fizz, silence. Someone next to you pulls the trigger, nothing happens. He tries again, and this time it explodes backward, showering him in sparks. He's fine. This time, you nod like it's normal, because it is. Recoil bruises your shoulder. The smoke chokes your eyes. After 5 rounds, your hands are black, your jacket is streaked, and you've inhaled enough sulphur to qualify as a fireplace. You reload while coughing, trying not to lose track of the steps. Powder, ball, ram, cap, aim, fire, over and over until someone says stop or someone goes down. Sometimes you're given target practice. Usually it's just a tree stump or a tin can. Accuracy is encouraged, but not expected. These aren't sharpshooter rifles. They're long, heavy sticks that might shoot straight if the stars align and the wind doesn't shift. You aim for the middle, you miss. Everyone does. Hitting anything past 50 yards is mostly luck, unless you've been doing this since childhood. Most haven't. The officers tell you to clean your gear. They mean your musket, but you stare at your canteen, your knife, your belt buckle, and wonder where to start. Everything's rusting. You scrape your bayonet with a rock just to make it shine. It dulls the edge, but at least it doesn't look like it came out of a swamp. Bayonets are mostly for show. You're told to fix them during drills. Long steel triangles that slide onto the muzzle. They look impressive. They terrify new recruits. But in actual combat, they're clumsy, heavy, and rarely used. You've seen more men trip over them than stab anything. Most just hold their rifles like clubs when it gets close. Steel meets bone, wood breaks. You don't think about it, you just swing. At some point during the day, the sergeant wants a demonstration. Everyone lines up. You go through the motions like a puppet. He screams about speed. You ram the ball faster. He yells about precision. You watch a guy 2 rows down drop his cap in the mud. He panics, grabs another, loads anyway. Someone claps, someone else rolls his eyes. It's theatre. All of it. Lunch comes, or doesn't. You eat what's left from breakfast, or chew on raw salt pork, while trying not to vomit. You drink the rest of your water. You'll regret it later, but thirst wins. Someone refills his canteen from a puddle. You say nothing. Later, someone tries to shoot a squirrel for dinner. His musket misfires. The squirrel lives. The soldier swears. Everyone else just keeps watching the fire burn low, waiting for darkness. Your rifle stays at your side through it all. Even when you're sitting, even when you sleep. You clean it when you can, curse at it when you have to. It's your tool, your burden, your maybe one day killer. You never trust it completely. That's smart. It never earned your trust. And as the fire dies and someone limps back to camp missing a toe, you lean your weapon against a rock, stretch your sore shoulder, and stare at the dark. Because tomorrow, if the thing fires, it might be into another human being. You don't realise how fast things can go wrong until you hear the word medic, and then you wish you hadn't. Someone yells it across the field, or the tent, or the tree line, and suddenly everyone moves. Not quickly, not efficiently, just enough to make space. Nobody wants to be near whatever's bleeding. It's not superstition, it's self-preservation. There's no real medical corps, no ambulances with sirens, just a couple men with a stretcher that smells like rot and dried sweat, and a surgeon with blood on his apron that never fully comes off. You see it first, the blood. Not fresh red, but that deep brownish black that means it's been seeping for a while. Then comes the smell. Metal, meat, filth. It hits you like smoke from a grease fire. You stop breathing through your nose. You watch as someone's carried in, half conscious, leg twisted in a way that suggests the bones either shattered or trying to escape his body. There's a hole in his uniform, another in his thigh, and more blood than you thought one person could lose, and still blink. He's not screaming yet. That's the worst part. He's just looking around like he's not sure where he is. That look never means anything good. The surgeon is already moving. No introduction, no explanation. He doesn't ask how the injury happened, because he doesn't care. What matters is whether the man can be saved, and if not, how fast he can be cut apart before the next one arrives. There's no anaesthesia. That's not a budget issue. It's just 1863. Ether exists, but you won't see much of it. Chloroform too, if you're lucky, but supplies are short, especially in field hospitals. Most of the time, the only painkiller is a stick to bite or a bottle of whatever whiskey hasn't been drunk by the guy with the band playing outside. You're handed the stick. You bite it. It splinters. The tools are laid out on a canvas cloth. A bone saw, a few knives, forceps, and some items that look like they were stolen from a butcher's shop. Nothing sterilised. That's not a thing yet. Germ theory is still considered a fancy idea in European books. Here, if it looks clean and hasn't rusted through, it's ready. You notice the blade still has dried blood in the teeth. That was from the last patient. Or maybe the one before him. They start cutting. No warning. No countdown. One man holds you down by the shoulders, another by the legs, and the doctor just digs in. It's not surgical, it's brutal. Quick and deep. You feel everything. The slicing, the tugging, the crack of your own bone being pulled away from your body like a log being snapped over a knee. You scream. Everyone does. It's not shameful. It's expected. There's no silence in a field hospital. Just screaming. Sometimes moaning. Sometimes praying. Once in a while, someone starts reciting Bible verses between gasps like they think it might earn them an easier death. It doesn't. If you're getting something amputated, it goes fast. That's the one upside. The surgeon's done it 100 times before. He finds the limb, makes 2 quick cuts, one to peel back the skin, another to saw the bone, then ties off whatever's left with a strip of linen that used to be a shirt or a curtain. Blood spurts. It always does. You might pass out. That's the ideal outcome. There's no stitching. They don't close the wound. They pack it with lint, maybe wrap it in rags, and hope the bleeding stops. If it doesn't, you bleed out. If it does, you get to spend the next several days lying in a tent full of flies, praying the rot doesn't set in. The pile of limbs grows outside. No, that's not a metaphor. There's an actual pile. Arms, legs, feet, sometimes hands. Tossed into a heap because there's nowhere else to put them. The ground is too hard to dig graves, and no one wants to bury a leg anyway. They just rot in the sun, swarmed by flies and dogs. You try not to look at it when you walk past. Gangrene sets in quick. It starts as a smell, then a colour. Then the skin turns black and starts to fall apart. You don't need a doctor to tell you what it means. If they catch it early, you lose more of the limb. If they don't, you lose the rest of you. It spreads fast, through tissue, through muscle, through the bloodstream. You go from wounded to dead in under a week, and most of that week is spent moaning under a blood-soaked blanket while the man next to you quietly asks God to be done already. There's no morphine for most of you. That's for officers, or guys with connections. The rest get whiskey, maybe. If you're lucky, you get a strong enough dose to go numb before the blade hits. Usually not. There's also opium, but it's rare, expensive, and poorly understood. You might get a spoonful, might not. Either way, the pain's coming. Infection is constant. Every wound turns red, then swollen, then hot, then foul. You see pus, you smell death. There are no gloves. The surgeon goes from patient to patient with the same stained apron, wiping his hands on it like that somehow counts as cleaning. You saw him pull one guy's arm off at noon and then dig a bullet out of someone's stomach at 1. No change of instruments, no wash basin, just a bloody rag and another scream. Your wound gets wrapped in whatever fabric's available. Sometimes clean, often not. You change your own bandages, or your tent mate does. If he's still alive, there's no nurse, just other soldiers, also wounded, helping each other out of sheer survival instinct. One guy passed out while cleaning another's leg. No one blamed him. They use maggots sometimes. They don't tell you, but you notice when your bandage twitches. Turns out maggots eat dead flesh and leave the live stuff alone. It's disgusting, but it works. Some swear by it. Others lose their minds and try to claw them out. That usually doesn't go well. Water is a gamble. You wash your wounds with it anyway. It burns. Probably means it's working. You hope it's not river water. You hope it hasn't been used already. You drink from the same source and pray it doesn't send you back into the surgeon's tent with something worse than a bullet wound. You see someone come in with a broken arm. Not even a bad break. Maybe from falling off a wagon. He leaves with a stump. No one explains. No one needs to. Infection's the real killer here. Not bullets, not cannonballs, just time and exposure. And filthy hands digging around inside you with a bent spoon and good intentions. Survival is a coin flip. One guy walks in with his side torn open and lives. Another takes a scratch to the knee and dies 2 days later, screaming about fire ants crawling under his skin. No one's keeping statistics. No one has time. The surgeon sleeps 2 hours a night, standing up, covered in blood. His assistants do their best. One of them threw up during a sawing once. He still sawed. That's the bar now. If you don't collapse, you're helping. You hear someone say they'd rather die than go under the knife. You nod. You've seen what under the knife looks like. You've smelled it. You've heard the aftermath. You know that the lucky ones pass out before the pain catches up. The unlucky ones scream until their throat gives out and then scream some more in silence. And later, if you survive, you get a medal. Or maybe just a crutch made from a fence post and a pat on the back from someone who isn't looking you in the eye. Either way, the saw keeps working. The pile gets bigger and the war keeps going. You need to go. Not eventually. Now. Your stomach's been twisting since breakfast. A mixture of burnt coffee, spoiled salt pork, and whatever bacteria is currently squatting in your intestines like an uninvited guest. You clench. You breathe. You know what's coming. And you also know there's no real solution for it. Just the latrine, if you can even call it that. There's no building, no outhouse, no stall, no seat, no walls, no lock. Just a trench. A shallow ditch dug by someone with a shovel, and absolutely no illusions about what it's for. There might be a plank across it, or there might not be. Depends on how long it's been since someone tried to upgrade the experience. And upgrade in this case means maybe less direct eye contact with the guy across from you. You walk over, holding your gear out of the way, looking for a spot that isn't already overrun with flies, footprints, or yesterday's catastrophe. There isn't one. The smell hits before you even reach it. An overwhelming wave of rot, methane, heat, and defeat. It smells like something died, got embarrassed, and died again. You gag. Everyone gags. You still have to squat. Privacy is not an option. There are 50 men using the same trench. Some are already there, pants down, knees shaking, trying to pretend they're somewhere else. Others are waiting nearby, pacing, groaning, clenching like it's a military drill. No one talks, no one jokes. It's not funny anymore. It was funny the first day. That wore off fast. You try to make eye contact with no one. You squat carefully, feet on uneven mud, hoping your balance doesn't give out mid-process. The last thing you want is to fall. You've seen it happen. Once you fall in, you never come back the same. Toilet paper doesn't exist. You know that already. You've come prepared. A wad of leaves, maybe a strip of cloth from a ruined undershirt. If you didn't, you'll improvise. Moss, bark, an old sock you swore you wouldn't need again. Someone once used the corner of a hardtack wrapper. He bled for 2 days. You wipe as gently as possible and still feel like you've sanded yourself raw. There's no water to clean with, no soap. You just pull your trousers up and pretend it's fine. You don't wash your hands. Not because you don't want to, because there's nothing to wash them with. The water bucket is reserved for drinking, and no one's wasting it on sanitation. Your fingers stay stained, your fingernails packed with whatever dirt, grease and bacteria you just crawled through. Someone sneezes while walking past you. They're wiping their nose with the same hand they used to clean themselves 10 minutes ago. You look down at your breakfast ration and wonder what's more dangerous, the food or the people holding it. The trench fills up quickly. They dig a new one when the old one overflows or becomes too dangerous to navigate. By too dangerous, we mean someone fell in and didn't come out without help. Sometimes they just cover the old one and dig the next one 10 feet away. There's no system, no long-term plan, just holes in the ground, and a vague sense that things are getting worse. Rain turns the trench into a swamp. The waste doesn't disappear. It floats. It spreads. It runs into nearby paths, puddles, tents. The ground turns soft and treacherous. You step wrong, and your boot sinks into something warm. You don't look down. You don't want confirmation. Night is worse. No torches, no lanterns. If you have to go, you grope around in the dark, with your trousers halfway down, and your dignity already gone. You trip over tent ropes, sleeping men, and the occasional raccoon digging through biscuit wrappers. If you're lucky, you don't step in anything. If you're not, you learn to live with the smell until morning. There are diseases everywhere. Dysentery, cholera, typhoid. All of them start here, in the latrines, where waste seeps into the soil and works its way back up through the water you drink and the hands you eat with. You hear someone call it the camp curse. You watch healthy men turn pale, then grey, then dead in less than a week. Not from bullets, not from bayonets, from bad timing and worse hygiene. You see signs nailed to trees near the trenches. Cover your waist, they say. Use the designated areas. But no one enforces it. Everyone's tired. Everyone's scared. Sometimes people just go behind a tent. Sometimes they dig a shallow hole a few feet from the food prep area. You see someone relieve himself next to a firewood pile. You don't have the energy to yell. You just walk away. There's a separate trench for officers, supposedly. A little farther from camp, behind some bushes. Rumour says it even has a seat. A crude plank with a hole cut in it. No one knows if it's true. No one's willing to check. It doesn't matter. You're not going there. There's no deodorant, no clean underwear. You smell yourself constantly. Others smell worse. The whole camp carries the scent of human waste like a badge. It clings to clothes, to bedding, to conversation. It wafts through tents and lingers under blankets. You stop noticing. You assume that's how the world smells now. When you're on the march, it's worse. There are no trenches, no time. You stop on the side of the road, squat behind a tree, hope no one's watching. Sometimes you don't make it. You see the evidence. Smears along the path, flies gathering, a man crying into his hands because his body gave out at the worst possible time. No one says anything. That could be any of us. People try to make jokes. They called a trench the throne or Fort Stink. They laugh when someone nearly falls in. But deep down, no one's laughing. Not really, because this is where it all starts. The infections, the fevers, the sudden deaths that happen quietly in the night. It starts here, in this shallow hole shared by too many men and too few options. And when you finally get up, adjusting your belt, trying not to touch anything, you know you'll be back. Maybe in an hour. Maybe less. Because that coffee wasn't brewed right. That pork was pink in the middle. And you can already feel your gut cramping again. And this time, there might not be a space left at the trench. Someone yells male call, like it means something. Like it's Christmas morning or a homecoming parade. But no one moves right away. Everyone just looks up from what they're doing. Eating, scratching, sharpening, thinking about nothing, and waits. It takes a second to remember how this works. Mail doesn't come often, and when it doesn't come fairly. Some get 3 letters, some get 1, most get nothing. The mail is a sack. Canvas, stained, creased, probably used for onions or musket rounds last month. A corporal opens it like he's performing surgery. He pulls out a crumpled stack of folded papers, wrapped in twine, maybe sealed with wax if the person back home still believes in small rituals. He clears his throat. No one cares what his throat sounds like. Everyone's listening for their name. Ellis, Franklin, J, letter. A guy across the fire lets out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. He takes the letter with both hands like it might break. He doesn't open it yet, just stares at it. Thumb on the edge, eyes glassy, like he's scared it might vanish if he moves too fast. Someone else's name is called. Then another. Then another. Each letter passed down like it's made of gold. Guys who haven't said a word all day suddenly start whispering thank yous. Some try to play it cool, tucking it into their jacket until later. Others can't wait. They unfold it right there on the spot, eyes scanning as fast as they can, lips moving silently, like they're trying to taste the words before they disappear. You wait, listening for your name. It doesn't come. You pretend you didn't expect it. You chew on the inside of your cheek. You adjust your hat. You scratch your arm, even though it doesn't itch right now. Just something to do. You tell yourself it's fine. You've gone longer. Maybe next time. Maybe the letter's late. Maybe it got lost. Or maybe the person who used to write you doesn't anymore. You think about what mail means here. It's not just words, it's proof. Proof that you still exist somewhere beyond this mud pit. That someone's thinking about you. That you had a life before the lice and the trench and the wet wool underwear. That you mattered enough for someone to sit down, pick up a pen, and spell your name right. The letters are simple. They talk about harvests, neighbours, weather, a new baby, a broken fence. Nothing important, and everything important. You see a man read a letter that says the cow died and cry like someone shot him in the chest. You see another one read, your brother enlisted, and stare at the fire for an hour without blinking. Every line is a connection, a string stretching across miles and months to pull you back to who you used to be. Some guys read their letters out loud, not the personal parts, just the funny ones. Someone's sister sent a drawing. Someone's mother included a prayer. Someone's wife described a cake she made that turned out terrible. Everyone laughs, then it's quiet again. They fold the letters back up like relics and tuck them into their packs next to their dry socks and secret stash of coffee beans. There are packages sometimes, wrapped in cloth or twine. Inside biscuits, nuts, candy, socks, a bar of soap that smells like lavender. The guy who gets it looks at the soap like it's too beautiful to touch. He unwraps it slowly, sniffs it once, then puts it back. He's not going to use it, he just wants to know it exists. Other times, the package is a Bible, or a small wooden cross, or a picture in a cracked frame. You see a man kiss a photo before sliding it into his coat. Another stares at a lock of hair tied with ribbon. He doesn't talk the rest of the day. Not all mail is welcome. One guy gets a letter and doesn't open it, just folds it and puts it in his pocket. Next morning he's gone. Took his rifle, left his boots. No one mentions it. A few nod. They get it. And sometimes the mail isn't for the living. A letter arrives with a name, but the man it's meant for isn't here anymore. He died last week, or last month, or yesterday afternoon while coughing blood into a rag no one could wash. The corporal reads the name, pauses, then just sets the letter aside like it never existed. Later, someone will burn it, or bury it, or keep it. Depends how close they were. You try writing back. You sit on a crate with a stub of pencil and the back of a ration slip. You don't know what to say. I'm alive feels like a lie. I'm fine is definitely one. You settle for something about the weather, a story about a tent collapsing, a joke about someone's nickname. You finish the letter without rereading it. You hand it off. You don't ask when it will get there, if it will get there. if they'll even be there to read it. You hear someone say the mail's running slow. You hear someone else say it's been intercepted. Confederates, maybe. Rain, maybe. Misfiled, maybe. No one knows. No one has to. The truth is, this war is a black hole for paper and people. Some things just don't come back. But still, when they yell mail call, you listen. Every time. You pretend you're not hoping. You act like you're just watching. But your ears perk up. Your heart beats a little faster. You strain to hear your name. And when it's not called, again, you nod. You tie your boots a little tighter. You say something sarcastic to no one in particular. And you go back to whatever it was you were doing before someone reminded you that the world keeps going without you. You don't know it's coming until someone shouts it. Could be a scout riding back from the tree line. Could be an officer who's been holding orders in his coat for 3 hours. Could be a kid who overheard something he wasn't supposed to. Doesn't matter how it starts. What matters is once it starts, it doesn't stop. They say you're moving into position. That's code for you're walking to the place where most of the dying happens. You shoulder your gear. You check your cartridges. You wipe your musket down one last time, even though you know it won't matter. You try not to think too hard. Or at all. There's no pre-game pep talk. No swelling music. No rallying cry that lifts your heart and steels your spine. Just orders barked out over clinking gear and the sound of boots squelching through churned up soil. The officers ride ahead. You walk, slowly, in lines. The tactic is simple. Everyone's seen it drawn out on a map with tiny wooden blocks. 2 lines of infantry face off across a field. You march forward. So do they. When someone shouts, you stop, raise your weapon, and fire. Then you reload, while they shoot back. It's not elegant. It's not smart. It's Napoleonic doctrine applied with Civil War technology. A century-old idea used in the age of rifled barrels and exploding shells. It made sense when muskets couldn't hit the broadside of a barn past 20 paces. But that's not what you're carrying. Your rifle can kill a man at 300 yards. So can his. And you're both walking straight at each other. Formations are tight. You're elbow to elbow with men you slept beside last night, marched with this morning, shared a can of beans with before dawn. You know who limps, who snores, who prays. You're about to find out who screams. As you march forward, the air gets thicker. Not with smoke, not yet, but with tension. Sound changes. You stop hearing birds. You hear your own breathing, the slap of boots, the clicking of hammers being drawn back. Then the first volley hits. You don't see the bullet that kills the man next to you. You just see him drop, like someone pulled his spine out through his boots. You keep moving. You're not supposed to stop. You fire back, not aiming so much as pointing in the general direction of enemy uniforms. You see flashes. You smell powder. You taste grit and iron in your teeth. There's no cover. Trees are too far. Trenches don't exist here. Just a flat field littered with fences, corpses, and splinters from the last artillery shell. You advance because stopping means dying where you are. You reload with trembling fingers. You tear open a cartridge with your teeth. Pour powder, drop the ball, ram it home, cap the nipple, aim, fire, repeat, if you remember how. Someone screams behind you. Someone else drops their weapon and runs. They don't make it far. A bullet catches them in the back. The officer doesn't flinch. He's already shouting at the rest to hold the line. You hold. Because if you don't, you die. Or worse, they call you a coward and you die later with a rope around your neck. You hear cannon fire. Not the bang, but the thud. A deep, belly-punching boom that rattles your teeth. then the whistle, then impact. Dirt and limbs fly upward in a shower of noise and heat. Someone's leg lands near your feet. You step around it. Not because you're cold, because there's no time to look. Artillery doesn't care who it hits. Friendly fire happens all the time. Half the men being shredded by shrapnel were shot at by their own side. The field doesn't discriminate, it just takes. You see a line of bodies drop in sync, like dominoes, hit by a single shell that tore through them like wet cloth. Their gear is still smoking, their rifles still loaded. You're deaf within minutes. Your ears ring from repeated blasts. You shout without realizing it. You can't hear yourself. You feel your chest heave, your throat burn, your fingers bleed. You keep moving. Your boots slide on blood and mud. You stumble, fall, rise, fire again. The smoke thickens. Gunpowder, sweat, panic. You lose sight of the enemy. You fire into the fog. Someone calls out positions, but you can't see them. You reload anyway. You shoot, because not shooting feels worse. Eventually, the line falters. Someone decides it's time to charge. It's not a strategy. It's an act of desperation. You sprint, or try to. Your legs are jelly, your pack drags you sideways. Your musket feels like a tree trunk in your hands. You trip over a dead man. You barely register it, you just run. Hand-to-hand combat is chaos. Bayonets aren't elegant. They don't pierce. They rip. You lunge at someone you don't know. In a uniform you've been trained to hate, and you both end up in the mud, grappling, screaming, swinging rifles like clubs. Someone brings a knife. Someone else uses a rock. You see teeth get knocked out. Eyes gouged. You feel a fist hit your temple, and black stars bloom across your vision. Then someone pulls you off. You don't know if they're friend or foe. Doesn't matter. You're still alive. The fighting drags on for hours. Sometimes all day. Sometimes it ends when the sun goes down and everyone's too exhausted to keep murdering. The field is quiet, except for the moaning. Always the moaning. You walk back to your line, or what's left of it. The man to your left is gone. So is the one to your right. Their places are filled with blood, spent cartridges, and pieces of them you don't want to think about. Someone lights a pipe. You sit down, hands trembling, staring at the ground like it might give you answers. No one speaks. There's nothing to say. You lost? Or maybe you won? It's hard to tell. The hill's still there. The bodies aren't moving. The officer's already writing a report. The drummer boy is crying. And tomorrow you might do it all again. He's 23, maybe 24. That's your officer. Lieutenant by title. Promoted after his predecessor caught a cannonball mid-sentence. He got the rank because he could read, had a coat that fit, and didn't flinch when someone bled out in front of him. That's the bar. You're supposed to follow him into fire. Most days, he's just trying to find his bootlaces. He looks clean the first time you meet him. Crisp sash, polished sword, a notebook tucked in his coat like he might need to diagram a battle plan on the back of a biscuit wrapper. You think, maybe he knows what he's doing. Maybe he has training. He doesn't. He read a manual once, got drilled in formation by a colonel who thought maps were a form of cheating. He learned most of his leadership from watching other men die badly, and then copying the parts that seemed less fatal. His eyes are bloodshot most mornings. He sleeps less than you do, not because he's up reading tactics, but because he's scared. You can see it. He paces before a march, whispers to himself during inspections, rubs the back of his neck like there's a voice there telling him how many will die if he gets it wrong again. He tries to act like he has command. He barks orders. Most of them are repeats of things he heard someone else yell first. Half the time you follow them just because it's easier than arguing. The other half, you ignore him because what he's saying would get you killed. He notices, doesn't press it, picks his battles. The ones on paper anyway. He writes letters constantly. Orders, reports, condolences. At night, by firelight, you see him scratching out names on a list, replacing one Private Thompson with another. Sometimes he just writes unknown. Sometimes he skips the paperwork entirely and throws the list in the fire. You respect that more. He carries a pistol. It misfires as often as your musket does. He hasn't drawn it in 3 weeks, except once, when 2 men in your company started fighting over a piece of soap. He fired into the air. Everyone froze. He didn't say anything, just lowered the gun, walked back to his tent, and sat down like someone had just informed him the war was going to last another 10 years. He talks to you occasionally. Nothing important. Asks how your boots are holding up. Tells you not to scratch your lice too loudly during inspection. Gives a nod when you hit a target during drills. He's trying. You give him that. But when the shells start falling and the smoke thickens, he's not a figure of inspiration. He's a silhouette you follow because it's either that or wander straight into the line of fire. He's already gotten 12 men killed. Some by mistake, some by miscommunication, some because someone told him to hold a position that no one should have held. You don't blame him out loud, but you know, everyone knows the hill was taken, then lost, then taken again. And at the end of it, half the company didn't come back. But he did. So did you. So here we are. He remembers their names. That's the part that makes it worse. You catch him staring at empty bedrolls some nights. He walks past where someone used to sit, stops, then keeps walking. You hear him say things under his breath, like he's reciting names in order, trying not to forget, or trying not to remember all at once. He's been wounded once. A graze, upper arm, bled like it mattered. Everyone gathered around, thinking maybe this was it. Maybe someone else would take over. He didn't cry out. He just gritted his teeth, ripped off a strip of his own sash, and wrapped the wound like a tourniquet. Then he gave the rest of the sash to a guy with a busted toe and walked off. Barely flinched. You think he wants to die sometimes. Not in a suicidal way. Just in a, maybe if I catch the next round, I can stop doing this kind of way. You recognise that look. You've seen it in the mirror. He gets letters too. From a sister maybe. Or a girl back home. Maybe a widow now. No one asks. He reads them alone. Sometimes he doesn't open them at all. Just folds them and puts them in his coat pocket like they're something fragile he's not ready to break. He drinks. Not more than anyone else. Just enough to soften the edges of reality. A sip here, a full cup there. It doesn't help. The war seeps in anyway. You can see it behind his eyes when someone new arrives, and he's already thinking about whether they'll still be breathing next week. One time, a new recruit asked him how to survive a battle. He just laughed. Not loud, just a single dry sound that felt like it cost him something. Then he said, "Don't be where the bullets are." That was it. The closest thing to advice he's ever given. He walks the line before battle, checks cartridge boxes, asks if anyone needs powder, makes sure your bayonets are fixed. But his hands tremble sometimes. Just for a second. Just enough to remind you he's 23. That he's guessing, like the rest of us. That every command could be the one that gets someone else killed. After battle he writes names again, crosses them out, reassigns gear, sends men to dig graves. He doesn't attend burials. Not because he's heartless, because if he did, he'd never stop standing there. You don't hate him. Not really. You don't worship him either. He's not a hero. He's not a leader by destiny. He's just the guy who didn't die first. And in a war like this, that's all it takes. There's no such thing as free time in camp. Only time you haven't been ordered to use yet. When you're not marching, drilling, digging, or dying, you sit. You stare. You wait. The hours crawl heavy and slow, broken only by coughs, groans, and the occasional shouted argument over whose turn it is to stir the coffee sludge. So eventually, someone starts playing music. It starts small. A harmonica, a fiddle, a banjo with half its strings. Some guy in your unit turns out to be half decent at fingerpicking, and suddenly he's a celebrity. Not because he's good, just because he knows 3 songs and has all his fingers. You sit around the fire while he saws away at the strings, making sounds that might have been considered joyful in a different lifetime. In this one, it's just something that drowns out the moaning from the medical tent. The music isn't loud. Nothing is. It's cautious, like everyone's afraid of enjoying it too much in case someone drops dead in the middle of the second verse, which has happened. Mid-song, someone slumped over, face in their mess tin. The music stopped, then started again a few minutes later. Quieter, slower. Same song. Some men singing, badly. You learn the same 6 lyrics over and over. One about a girl named Nellie. One about whiskey. One about some southern town no one here has actually seen. The voices crack, strain, go flat. No one minds. You're not singing to sound good. You're singing so you don't hear the rats in the tents behind you. There's card games, with half decks and grease-stained paper. No money changes hands. There isn't any to spare. So you gamble with matches, buttons, bullets. Once, a man bet his spare sock. It was full of holes and probably had lice, but someone still won it. He wore it proudly until it rotted off 2 days later. Dice games happen too, usually on a blanket in the dirt. The rules change constantly, sometimes mid-roll. Fights break out, then get resolved. Then everyone goes back to rolling again, because no one wants to just sit in silence and think. Jokes get passed around, like rations. Most are terrible, all of them recycled. If someone laughs, even once, you hear it again for the next week. One guy with a crooked tooth tries to do impressions. Another mimics the sergeant. Everyone laughs when he gets the voice right. Everyone gets quiet when the sergeant walks by. Reading is rare. There's a Bible or two, a newspaper from 3 months ago, a water-stained romance novel that's missing the last 20 pages. You've read it anyway, twice. You still don't know how it ends. You argue about it with another man who insists the heroine marries the baker, not the lawyer. Neither of you care, but the argument helps pass the time between rain and dysentery. Writing letters is entertainment now. Not because it's fun, but because it feels productive. You sit hunched over a board or a knee, scribbling with a pencil nub on whatever paper you can find. You try to sound hopeful. You make up stories. You draw little maps. You fold the letter carefully, then realise you don't have a stamp, and won't until someone rides into town with a new supply. So you keep it in your coat, already stained with coffee and sweat. Then there's the drama. Someone steals from the supply tent. Someone else gets accused. Someone tells the sergeant. The accused denies it. Tension builds. Voices rise. No punches. Not yet. But later that night, one man wakes up with a bloody nose and no idea who did it. Everyone pretends they were asleep. The drama passes. It always does. Occasionally you get a preacher, usually self-appointed. He starts talking about fire and judgment and how God is testing everyone. You sit and nod, not because you believe him, but because he's talking about something that isn't trench rot or lice. When he finishes, someone always mutters something blasphemous under their breath. You pretend not to laugh. Animals wander through sometimes. A stray dog becomes a mascot. Someone feeds it scraps. Someone else tries to ride it as a joke. The dog bites him. Everyone cheers. Then someone shoots the dog for barking at a passing officer. No one cheers that. Then there's dysentery, the not fun part of camp entertainment. If you haven't had it yet, you will. Your stomach turns on you. You sweat, shake, and sprint for the latrine trench. Except it's full. Or flooded. Or someone's passed out across it and no one's moved him. So you squat behind a tree, cursing everything you've ever eaten. Some men try to ignore it. They sit perfectly still, clenching, praying. You see them go pale, then bolt. A few don't make it. Their pants tell the story. No one laughs, no one mocks. Everyone knows they're next. Evenings are quieter. Not peaceful, just slower. Someone's always coughing. Someone's always throwing up. You hear fiddles again, off-key, tired. You hum along even when you don't know the tune. Anything to not listen to your thoughts. You lay on your back, staring at the stars, pretending they mean something. You tell yourself you'll remember this. The songs, the laughter, the way someone played the same 3 notes over and over like they were trying to summon a memory. You won't. You'll remember the smell more than the melody. And when the fire dies out and the last notes fade, you roll over on your blanket, scratch another bite, and try to sleep before the next thunderstorm rolls in, or someone starts vomiting again next to your head. Because tomorrow, the music will start all over again, and so will the symptoms. It starts with a drizzle, not a storm, not a downpour, just that light, persistent mist that feels harmless until everything you own is damp, and nothing dries for the next week. At first, you think maybe it'll pass. You tuck your blanket tighter, shift under the flap of your tent, pretend your boots aren't soaking through. By the second hour, it's rain, not cinematic, not cleansing, just cold, indifferent. It comes down like the sky's decided it doesn't want you here anymore. Steady, grey, endless. Your wool uniform starts drinking it up. Your hat droops, your hair sticks. Water runs down the back of your neck in slow, miserable rivulets. You don't bother wiping it away. It'll just come back. The sergeant says it's time to move out. No reason given, no destination explained. Could be repositioning, could be retreat, could be someone finally read a map upside down and decided you've been camped in the wrong valley this whole time. All you know is that you're walking again. The ground was bad before. Now it's a swamp. Your boots sink half an inch with every step, then fight back with a suction sound like the earth is trying to eat you. After the first hour, you stop trying to walk around puddles. There's no point. The road, if it ever was a road, is gone. Just churned up muck covered in broken fence rails, collapsed wagons, and the occasional half-buried supply crate. Your pack weighs more now. Water found its way in. Your blanket's heavier. Your coat's heavier. The straps on your canteen stretch and dig deeper into your shoulder with every step. You want to shrug it off, just for a second, but you know better. Once it's off, it's twice as hard to put back on. You keep walking. The column stretches for miles. Or maybe it just feels like it. You lose track of where you are in the line. You see the same faces, same soaked hats, same hunched shoulders over and over. No one talks much, just breath, mud, and the occasional grunt when someone slips and goes down face first into the soup. No one helps, not because they're cruel, because helping means stopping, and stopping means freezing. You try to eat on the move. Doesn't work. Your hardtack is damp and soft in the middle. A sentence that should be comforting, but isn't. It tastes like wet chalk. Your fingers are too numb to hold it steady, so you just bite a corner and let it sit in your mouth until you give up. You drink from your canteen. The water's warm and metallic. You drink it anyway. On the second day, the rain keeps falling. Not harder, just longer. It's in your ears now, in your sleeves, in your soul. Your socks haven't been dry since yesterday morning, and your skin is starting to slough in pale, wrinkled layers. You pour water out of your boots when you stop, then put them back on wet. There's no fire to dry anything. Nothing stays lit. You smell like rot. Everyone does. You pass a wagon stuck axle deep in the mud. The mule that was pulling it gave up hours ago, and is now just lying in place, breathing slow, eyes glazed. The teamster shrugs. No one has rope to help. You just keep walking. Someone in your unit breaks a toe. He caught it on a rock hidden in the sludge. No one stops. He limps, then drags, then disappears to the rear, muttering something about catching up later. He won't. You don't know where you're going. Not really. The officers mutter something about high ground, but all you see are more trees, more flooded fields, more fences with broken gates pointing in every direction like nature's idea of a joke. You climb hills only to slide down the other side. You cross creeks with water up to your knees. Your trousers are soaked, your thighs chafe, and every time you step, it feels like your body is trying to peel itself apart from the inside. Blisters reopen. Old ones. New ones. You stop counting. On the third day, it's colder. The rain hasn't stopped, but the temperature dropped just enough to turn every gust of wind into a knife under your collar. Your hands won't close all the way. You hold your musket like it's part of you now. Not a weapon, not a tool. Just an extension of the misery. You haven't fired it in days, but you still check the cap, out of habit. Water seeped in. It's useless until you dry it. That might be never. Someone up ahead vomits, then collapses. You step around them. Someone else does too. The line doesn't pause. No one's marking where the body fell. No one's keeping account. If they can get up, they'll follow. If not, well, your feet are numb. Not cold, numb. You could be bleeding and you wouldn't know. You stop feeling your left pinky toe sometime in the morning. By afternoon, you decide not to think about it anymore. You wonder how far you've come. 20 miles, 30, could be 5, could be 50. There's no signposts, no landmarks, no clear end in sight. You're just moving. The same grey trees, the same flooded fields, the same miserable faces staring forward like this is the only direction left in the world. When you stop for the night, if you stop, there's no camp. Just a few scattered fires that die fast in the drizzle. Someone pulls a blanket over themselves like that's enough to matter. You curl up in wet clothes, back to the wind, forehead to your knees, and wait for morning to arrive or your heart to stop. Whichever comes first. Because in the Civil War, a march isn't about getting somewhere. It's about not dying before you do. You're not dead, which is what makes this worse. Capture isn't dramatic. There's no standoff, no white flag. 1 minute you're behind a tree, low on ammo, breathing smoke. The next, someone yells to drop your weapon or be bayoneted where you stand. You glance around. Your unit's gone, scattered, bleeding, surrendered, or already buried under the mud. You drop the musket. Not because you're weak, because you're done. They tie your hands with twine, then march you off with a dozen other, equally filthy, half-dead men. Some can barely walk. One has a blood-stained rag tied around his head that hasn't been changed in 2 days. Someone else coughs the whole way, deep and wet. The kind of cough that usually ends with a blanket over the face. You don't ask where you're going, you don't need to. There are only a few options, and none are good. The prison is a fenced dirt lot. Maybe a stockade. Maybe a converted barn. Maybe just a trench with guards at the edges. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you're in it, and you're not getting out unless someone trades for you, or forgets you. The first thing you notice is the smell. It hits before you're even through the gate. It's part human waste, part mildew, part unwashed skin left to stew under canvas and sun. The ground is soupy, layered with weeks of rain and rot. You feel it seep through your boots. Someone nearby is missing a shoe and just doesn't care anymore. You're told where to sit, you wait. No one tells you anything. You assume you'll be processed. You won't. You assume you'll get food. You might. The first meal is called a ration. What you get is a half handful of beans and a piece of bread so stale it might as well be chalk. You eat every crumb. Your stomach cramps from the effort. You drink water from a shared bucket. It smells like metal and feet. You drink it anyway. At night, there are no beds, no blankets, just the same patch of mud you sat on all day. If it's cold, you huddle with others like livestock. If it rains, you stay wet. If someone dies during the night, they stay with you until morning, when a guard eventually comes around with a wheelbarrow. There's no sanitation. A hole if you're lucky. Most go where they're standing. You try not to step in it, but eventually it's everywhere. On the ground. On the rags. On people's legs. You tell yourself you'll stay clean. You stop trying after the second day. Disease moves faster than rumours. Everyone's sick. Some are obvious. Red eyes, open sores, skin peeling at the joints. Others just waste away. You watch a man lose weight so fast he stops casting a shadow. Then one morning he doesn't get up. You don't ask what happened. You know, there are no doctors, just other prisoners who maybe used to be barbers or farmers, and now try to clean wounds with old shirts and rainwater. You help someone once, tying a bandage around their leg with a shoelace. They thank you. Next day, their leg is black. 2 days later, they stop responding when you talk to them. You don't learn names. Not anymore. Names mean remembering. Faces blur. You share your corner with a man missing 2 fingers, a boy who might be 16, and someone who hasn't spoken since you arrived. They all cough. They all sleep with one eye open. The guards don't speak much. They walk the perimeter like they're as tired as you are. Some throw scraps in like feeding pigs. Others just look away when someone screams. Once in a while, one kicks a bucket of clean water over, just because. You don't react. No one does. Your skin starts to peel. First around the ankles, then your hands. Your gums bleed when you chew. Your teeth feel loose. You start seeing things. Shadows, figures that aren't there. The smell of bacon in the corner even though you haven't smelled cooked food in weeks. You blink it away. You try to write a letter. There's no paper. You scratch a name into the dirt. Rain washes it away before you finish. The hunger gets sharper before it goes dull. At first you dream about food. Then you stop dreaming. Then you stop caring. You see men fight over an onion. An onion. One wins, eats it raw, and vomits it back up within an hour. The loser eats that. You don't blame him. Once, someone kills a rat, roasts it over a matchstick fire, shares it. You eat a bite. It's stringy. You cry while chewing. Not from guilt, from relief. Time stops. You don't know how long you've been there. Days bleed together. The sun rises, sets, rain falls. Someone dies. Someone else takes their place. You count your ribs with one hand. You run out of numbers. Then one day, someone says there's a prisoner exchange. You're not on the list. You watch men shuffle out with eyes like dead coals. You wonder if they'll live long enough to make it home. You stay. You hear rumours about Andersonville, about Elmira, about camps where the death rate is higher than the front line. You think maybe you're in one of those, or maybe this is the better one. That's the worst thought of all. And when it finally happens, when someone taps your shoulder, calls your name, tells you you're going home, you almost don't believe them. You stand. You can't walk straight. You haven't stood in a week. You lean on a stranger who can barely support himself. No one smiles. You don't feel free, just empty. Your rifle is old, older than you probably, issued to someone before you got it. Maybe two people. The stock is cracked near the butt plate. The trigger sticks. The barrel's fouled from 100 rounds that were never properly cleaned. You know this. Everyone does. You carry it anyway because there's nothing else. It's a muzzle loader, Springfield, Enfield, whatever was in supply when the crates were opened. You load it from the top, like it's 1776, not 1863. You've memorised the drill. Tear the cartridge, pour the powder, drop the ball, ram it, prime the cap, aim, fire. That's the idea. When it works. When it doesn't, things go wrong fast. Misfires are common. You cap the nipple, pull the trigger, and get a click. Or worse, nothing. You tilt the barrel, shake it, try again. The powder might be wet. The cap might be bad. You don't have spares. You pray and pull the trigger again. Still nothing. You're holding a 4-foot paperweight while bullets hiss past your head. Sometimes it fires late. A hang fire, they call it. You pull the trigger, it hesitates, then explodes. Not forward, backward. The hammer jumps. The lock slams into your hand. Your ears ring for 10 minutes. Your palm bleeds from metal shrapnel that wasn't supposed to move. You don't drop the gun, not because you're brave, because your fingers won't unclench. Other times, the load doesn't seat right. The ball gets stuck halfway. The powder doesn't sit evenly. You feel resistance in the rod, but shove it down anyway. You're in a rush. You always are. Then you fire and the barrel jumps like it's trying to escape your hands. You smell something burning that isn't powder. It's skin. Yours. Someone once double-loaded. Forgot they'd already poured powder, jammed another round in, capped and fired. The rifle exploded. Split down the barrel like a peeled banana. Took off 2 fingers, shredded the man's cheek, sent fragments into the guy next to him. They both survived. Sort of. Neither fired again. Bayonets fall off sometimes. You fix yours before battle, twist it into place, then lunge at something that moves. It slides off the barrel and skitters across the dirt like a thrown knife. You're left holding a stick. You don't have time to pick it up. Cleaning is a joke. You're supposed to swab the barrel, oil the spring, polish the lock. When? After a march? After 3 days of rain? After it's been caked with blood, dirt, and ash from a fire, you used to boil river water? You wipe it down when you remember. Sometimes just with your shirt sleeve. The residue builds up. It always does. You hear stories. A man dropped his musket during a retreat. When he bent to grab it, the impact triggered the cap. It went off in the mud. Shattered his hand. He screamed for an hour. They amputated above the wrist. Not because they had to. Because they didn't have time to do anything else. Another soldier, nervous, hand shaking, capped his rifle with the muzzle aimed downward. The ball discharged straight into his own foot. Took out 2 toes. He limped for a week. Then he got gangrene. They took the leg. He didn't even get near the enemy. People forget how hot the barrel gets. You fire 3 shots in quick succession. The wood steams. You go to sling the rifle across your shoulder. It scorches the side of your neck. You drop it, curse, and someone yells at you for mishandling your gear. You rub the blister while reloading. No sympathy, no pause. Sometimes it's not the rifle. It's the bullets. Mini balls, soft lead, conical and devastating. But the cartridges get wet. The powder clumps. You load it anyway. You're desperate. You feel the shot lag inside the barrel when it goes. The recoil stutters. The range shortens. You watch the enemy twitch, then keep coming. You reload, heart racing, hands greasy from your own sweat and soot. The percussion caps are unreliable, bent, crushed, occasionally lost in the bottom of your cartridge pouch. You fumble with them like you're performing surgery with mittens on. In a hurry you drop one. It lands in the mud. You fish it out. Use it anyway. But what's a little dirt between you and an explosion? Once your tent mate tried to clean his rifle too fast. Used the cloth that caught in the barrel. Didn't notice. Fired it next day. The obstruction turned it into a pipe bomb. The explosion blew off the top third of the barrel. The shockwave took half his face. You saw him afterward, or what was left. He didn't scream. His mouth was gone. You keep checking yours? Every night. Even when you're too tired to care. You inspect the cap, run your finger down the barrel, feel for cracks. You pretend it will make a difference. You know it won't, but it's that. Or sit awake wondering if the next trigger pull ends with a bullet or a self-inflicted amputation. The officers say the guns are reliable. Just follow your training, they say. You laugh, quietly under your breath. You've seen someone's rifle go off during a drill. Straight into the dirt. The noise made half the line jump, and one man wet himself. He wasn't green. He just knew what a misfire could do. No one trusts their muskets. But you still carry it. Not because it's safe. Because without it, you're useless. You could die because it jams. You could die because it goes off wrong. But you'll definitely die if you don't have it at all. So you clean it again, as best you can. Wipe the barrel, shake the moisture out, pray the powder's dry. You slide the bayonet back on, knowing it might fall off the second you need it. And then you close your eyes, hoping the next time you fire, it hits something besides your own foot. You're not on the front. Not anymore. That should mean something. It doesn't. You've been given leave. Maybe you're recovering. Maybe you were rotated out. Maybe someone thought you needed rest. That's funny. There's no rest anymore. Just different kinds of exhaustion. The trip home takes days. Or weeks. You hitch rides on carts, barter for a place in a wagon, walk most of it. Your boots are still damp. Your coat still smells like smoke and rot. You keep your rifle close, even though you're technically not supposed to have it. You don't trust rules anymore. Or silence. When you reach your town, you almost don't recognise it. If you're lucky, there's still a town at all. Some aren't. Some were in the path of a march. Union or Confederate, doesn't matter. One army passed through, took what it needed, burned what it didn't. The other army came later and did the same. Now it's just smouldering chimneys, busted fences, and a barn someone's using as a grave marker. You stand in what used to be a main street, looking at the blackened shell of the general store, where you once bought nails. The post office is gone. The church is half collapsed. The air smells like wet ashes and quiet. If the town's still standing, it's not the same. People look different. Thinner. Harder. Every face is lined with worry or softened with shock. You see familiar eyes in unfamiliar bodies. Someone waves at you. You wave back hesitantly. You can't remember their name. They remember yours. You wish they didn't. Your house is there. Mostly. The porch leans. The roof has holes. The garden is just dirt now. No one's had time to plant anything. Your mother opens the door like she's seeing a ghost. Maybe she is. You step inside and everything feels smaller. The furniture looks wrong. The smell's off. You try to sit, but your body won't let you. The floor creaks differently. You don't recognise the silence. They ask you questions. How was it? Are you hurt? Did you see anyone you knew? You answer in fragments. Fine. Not bad. Cold. You don't tell them about the trench, or the rats, or the sound a man makes when he dies face down in his own vomit. They wouldn't understand. You're not sure you do. Your siblings stare at you. The little ones don't know what to say. One asks about your rifle. You hand it to them, unloaded. They hold it like a toy. You try not to flinch. Meals are different. There's food, barely. Cornbread, salt pork, molasses if someone saved a jar. You eat it slow, chewing like your jaw forgot how. Your stomach cramps. It's not used to eating this much without movement. You excuse yourself halfway through. You say you're tired. You're always tired. At night, the quiet is unbearable. No snoring, no boots, no coughing, no fires crackling or someone retching into a ditch. Just the sound of wind through half-broken shutters and the occasional owl. You lie awake, listening for cannon fire that never comes. People come by the house. Neighbours, church folks, curious ones. They want to shake your hand. They say they're proud. They say you're a hero. You smile politely and wish they'd stop saying things that aren't true. They ask if it was hard. You nod. They ask if you killed anyone. You lie. Some towns are occupied. Union troops enforcing loyalty. Confederate partisans making sure you vote the right way. You see soldiers on both sides, patrolling the same roads you used to walk to school. One of them asks for your papers. You show your pass. He barely looks at it. His hand rests on the butt of his pistol. You nod and move on. You visit a friend, or what's left of one. They lost a leg, or an eye, or all of it, inside. You sit in silence for an hour, sharing a tin of coffee. No one speaks. There's nothing new to say. You already said everything on the battlefield, with grunts, curses, screams. Down the road, someone's barn catches fire. They say it was an accident. Could have been lightning. Could have been soldiers looking for something to burn. You watch the flames eat through the roof, while neighbours run with buckets and blankets. You stand there, arms folded, thinking about how fire smells the same, no matter where you are. You don't help. You've seen worse. Someone's daughter gives you a pie. She smiles when she hands it over. You thank her. You don't eat it. You can't. Your mouth still tastes like powder. They ask if you'll go back. You say you don't know. You do. Of course you will. You have to. There's no work here. No future. No peace. Just burned fields, empty pantries, and people waiting for the war to end like it's something that happens overnight. You want to tell them it doesn't end. It just stops making new graves for a while. So you walk outside. You stand in what used to be your town. You look at the cracked signs, the scorched barns, the black marks on brick chimneys. Someone says, "At least it's quiet now." You don't answer. Because if it's quiet, it's only because there's nothing left to scream. You hear the phrase once, maybe on the road south, maybe from a newspaper, maybe from a Confederate soldier, half joking before he spits at your boots. Southern hospitality. You file it away under things that used to mean something before the war, twisted the words out of shape. Now it means something else entirely. Southern hospitality is a cannonball crashing through a farmhouse wall at 2 a.m. It's picket lines where no one talks and everyone fires to kill. It's waking up in a cotton field because the trees were shelled flat the night before and there's no shade left. You're on campaign, deep into territory that on paper belongs to the Confederacy, but on the ground it belongs to no one. Burned farms, empty cabins, livestock long since eaten or scattered. What's left of the towns are shells. Courthouses with blown out windows. Jails with the doors swinging in the wind. Main Street looks like a graveyard where no one bothered to bury anything. Food is gone. What wasn't stolen was requisitioned. What wasn't requisitioned was burned. You walk past blackened cornfields and chicken coops reduced to bones and rusted nails. A storehouse you pass is padlocked. Someone breaks the lock with a rifle butt and finds nothing but dust and a single bag of weevils. You cook them anyway. The civilians you meet, when you meet them, don't smile. They don't wave. Some close their shutters. Some just stare, blank-eyed, not afraid, just tired. So tired, they don't even bother hiding the anger anymore. If they have food, they lie about it. If they have children, they keep them close. You try to say something polite once. They turn away like you aren't there. There's no trade, no coin. Confederate money is worth less than the paper it's printed on. Union money's not much better down here. If you want something, corn, a chicken, a scrap of cloth, you take it. Or someone else does. You try not to watch. You try not to think about the girl who cried when someone pulled her last quilt from the bed. You tell yourself it's war. Then you stop telling yourself anything. Blockades choke the coast. Ports shut down months ago. Nothing goes in. Nothing comes out. No salt, no sugar, no cloth. A town near the river tries to bribe its way open with whiskey and fish. The gunboats shell it flat in under an hour. You see what's left when you pass through. Chimneys and iron stoves standing like teeth in the mud. You ask a local for directions once. Old man, barefoot, shirt like a rag. He squints at you and says, "Don't matter where you go, just more war that way." He's right. You head west. There's another skirmish, another farmhouse riddled with holes. You sleep on the floor beside a chair that still rocks back and forth on its own, like someone got up from it too fast and never came back. The weather doesn't help. Summer down here is a slow boil. You sweat in places you didn't know had skin. Mosquitoes hunting clouds. You fan them off, slap your neck, your arms, your face. You still end up with bites the size of bullets. Your canteen runs low halfway between towns. The creek is stagnant, warm, green at the edges. You drink it anyway. You know better. You drink it anyway. They call this scorched earth. Burn everything behind you so no one can use it. You've been told it's a strategy. Feels more like spite. You see slaves, or what's left of slavery. Groups of people moving on foot, with bags, barefoot, some in lines, some in silence. Some following the army, hoping for food or freedom or something that isn't behind them. Some stay, not because they want to, because there's nowhere else to go. You pass plantations. Grand houses with sagging porches and broken shutters. Empty fields. Half-picked cotton drying on the stems. Someone carved a message into the front gate of one. Yankees took the rest. You don't know what the rest means. Probably everything. Artillery shows up often. Not on schedule. Not with warning. You'll be marching through pine forest when the first shell whistles past. Then another. The treetops shatter. Branches rain down like spears. You hit the dirt. Someone ahead screams. Someone behind stops moving. The blast is deafening, but the silence afterwards worse. You move again, not because you're told, but because staying put is suicide. Every town has rumours. That Lee is moving north. That Grant is already here. That someone surrendered. That someone else took it back. No one believes anything, but everyone believes someone's about to die. You spend 3 days outside a city that refuses to fall. You can see it from the ridge. Cannon smoke curls above the rooftops. The clock tower hasn't worked in weeks. You eat rice boiled in river water, standing ankle deep in mud, while a drummer boy 3 feet away vomits from heat stroke. He doesn't stop drumming. No one tells him to. Eventually you take the city. Or someone else does, and you arrive late. Doesn't matter. The gates are open, the flags are different, the buildings are still burning. You walk through the square and see women hauling buckets of water with hands that haven't stopped shaking. You nod at them. They don't nod back. There's nothing left to win. Just territory you now occupy until someone else marches through to take it again. That's Southern hospitality. The North is different. Cleaner, they say, more civilized, industrial. You don't know what that means until you're standing in front of a brick building 5 stories high, with smoke pouring from the top, and a line of men outside who all look just as broke as you. You're not back from war. You're just between assignments. You didn't choose this job. You ended up here because your farm's gone, or your town is occupied, or your leg's bad, and someone told you factory work would be easier. They lied. It's not easier. It's just slower pain. You walk in and get handed a number. Not a name. A number. You're told to follow a man in suspenders who doesn't make eye contact. He leads you up 2 sets of narrow wooden stairs that groan under your weight. You're shown a machine, a loom, or a lathe, or a stamp press. Something that punches or spins or bites. He points at a stool. He says, "Don't touch anything that moves. Don't talk. If it jams, flag someone. If it smokes, run." That's orientation. The floor is always wet, not with water, with oil, grease, sweat. The smell burns your nose, coal, metal, dust. You breathe through your mouth for the first hour. After that, you just stop noticing. It's loud. Not battlefield loud. Different loud. Mechanical. Endless. No rhythm, no pauses. Just the clatter of moving parts and the shriek of belts turning fast enough to skin you alive. You hear someone lose a finger 3 days in. He doesn't scream. He just looks at the hand like he's not sure what's missing. Then he wraps it in a rag and goes to sit outside. He doesn't come back. Your shift is 12 hours, sometimes more. The bell rings in the morning and again at night. One break, maybe. A chunk of bread in a corner by the boiler. You eat standing up with your hand still stained black. No one talks. They just chew and look at the wall like it owes them something. Your job is the same motion. Over and over. Pull this lever. Feed the spool. Stack these crates. You stop thinking. You stop blinking. Your back starts to ache. You stretch once and get yelled at. Faster, they say. You're paid by the piece. You're not paid much. You send half home, assuming the post office hasn't burned down again. The other half disappears into rent for a room the size of a closet above a tavern that never stops playing piano out of tune. You sleep there some nights. Others you just stare at the ceiling until the bell tells you it's time to go back and start over. You try to talk to someone once. A man beside you, maybe your age. You mention the war. He nods but says nothing. You realise he's missing part of one ear. You realise everyone here has something missing. An arm, a limb, an eye that doesn't focus. This isn't a factory. It's a graveyard that still pays wages. Some workers are children, barely up to your chest. They crawl between machines to fix jams. Fast, quiet, scared. One trips and gets caught in a gear. The floor manager drags him out. He's alive, mostly. The machine gets cleaned, the work resumes, no one mentions it again. There's no time off. If you get sick, you come in anyway. If you miss a day, they dock your pay. If you miss 2, they replace you. No warning, just another number at the same stool. You walk by a man coughing blood into a rag. He keeps turning the crank like nothing's wrong. He probably dies 2 days later. You never learn his name. Your clothes never stop smelling like smoke. Your hands never get fully clean. The calluses get harder. Your knuckles crack. You bleed from the same cut every week. You forget what sunlight feels like, unless you're lucky enough to be near a window. Which you're not. You wonder if this is better than the war. No one's shooting at you, but your body still breaks, piece by piece. And at least in the war you got to lie down sometimes. You hear rumours of strikes. Men walking out, demanding shorter shifts, better pay. They usually get arrested. Or worse, replaced by others desperate enough to take less. You don't strike. You don't complain. You keep your head down, because at least this job doesn't end with a letter home in a pine box. One night, you dream of your musket, of the campfire, of a man singing off-key 2 tents over. You wake up coughing, covered in coal dust and confusion. You miss the war for exactly 10 seconds. Then the bell rings, and you remember you're still a prisoner. You're dead now, or someone thinks you are. That's how this starts. Not with a bullet, or a shell, or a scream. With a list. A long, handwritten list scratched out in the half-light of a battlefield tent by a man with ink-stained fingers and zero certainty. He goes body by body, pocket by pocket, trying to match names to faces that don't have them anymore. Your name is Private Elijah T. Hartwell. Or maybe Hartswell. Or maybe it was Elisha. The tag on your jacket is gone. The paper in your cartridge box is soaked through. Your mess tin had your initials carved in it once, but it got buried in the mud when the line broke and everyone started running the wrong direction. So the chaplain makes his best guess. He's done this before, hundreds of times. Sometimes more than a dozen in a single morning. He kneels beside a corpse, closes the eyes if they're still there, and writes the same opening line over and over. "Dear Mrs. Hartwell, it is my sad duty to inform you." He keeps it short. They're supposed to be comforting, gentle, vague. You died bravely. You died quickly. You did not suffer. He doesn't know if any of that's true. He doesn't ask. There's no time for follow-up questions when the stretcher bearers are already loading up the next wagon and a shell just took out half the tree line. If he has your Bible, he sends it home. If he finds a lock of hair, a photo, a letter half written, he tucks it into the envelope. Sometimes he forgets. Sometimes there's nothing to send but a button and a blood-stained scrap of canvas. If he can't read your handwriting, he makes something up. And if he's tired, and he's always tired, the name gets misspelled, or the unit number's off, or the hometown is listed wrong. A mother in Ohio receives a letter for someone from Alabama. A wife in Pennsylvania is informed of a death she already buried 6 months ago. A father stares at a letter addressed to his son, signed by someone named Chaplain Moray, and wonders how many other names that man's gotten wrong. Sometimes the letters never arrive. Sometimes they arrive months late, long after the war's moved on and everyone's assumed the worst. Occasionally, 2 show up for the same man, one saying he died at Shiloh, the other that he perished near Petersburg. Both with different dates. Both signed by different men. The family frames them both. Just in case. Sometimes you're not even dead. You were wounded, left behind, captured, sent to a prison with no paper, no stamps, no name list. You come home 6 months later with a limp, a beard, and a haunted stare, and find your name carved into the local monument. Someone reads your death letter aloud at church while you stand in the back row, unsure whether to interrupt. Sometimes someone else dies wearing your coat. Your name is written on the inside collar. They send your belongings home to your family. Your mother faints. Your sister goes quiet. Your dog waits by the door for a week and then stops. You arrive 2 weeks later. Everyone's relieved. No one talks about the funeral. The chaplain keeps writing. Some are better at it than others. One adds poems. Another just sticks to the facts. One drinks between letters. You can tell by the ink blots and the handwriting that drifts sideways by the end of the page. He gets reassigned. Or maybe he dies. The next chaplain doesn't bother with names at all. Just initials and dates. You never see your death letter, obviously, but maybe someone reads it to you if you're injured and they think you won't make it. Maybe a nurse says it softly while tucking a blanket under your chin. Maybe she stops halfway through when she realises you're not as gone as they thought. But most of the time, you're just a name on a list, written by someone who was hungry, wet, scared, and under fire. And somewhere far away, someone's reading a letter that says you died in glory, that you were brave, that your last words were about home, that someone cared enough to write it all down. And that might be true, but they still spelled your name wrong. You made it. That's what they tell you. You survived. You came home. You're lucky. You're whole. Or mostly. Or enough that people don't know whether to congratulate you or look away when you walk down the street. Your leg didn't make it. Musket ball, gangrene, field sore. You remember the sore more than the injury. You remember the screaming. Not just yours. Everyone's. You remember the smell. You still do. It comes back in dreams. Now you have a wooden replacement. It chafes. It creaks. And the straps cut into your thigh. You walk like a man twice your age. Every step feels like it's echoing the word reminder. Some people watch. Some pretend not to. You prefer the staring. At least it's honest. The war's over. People keep saying that. They hang flags. They give speeches. They talk about unity and rebuilding and how proud they are. You nod when they say it. You smile sometimes. You do not feel proud. You feel tired. Sleep doesn't help. Not anymore. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of gunfire that isn't coming. Except sometimes it is. Inside your head. Your heart races for no reason. Your hands shake. You grip the edge of the mattress like it's a rifle. You try to breathe, but it's not the kind of thing breathing fixes. No one calls it anything. Not yet. No diagnosis. No pamphlets. Just bad nerves. Melancholy. Or, he's not the same since the war. You hear someone say that about you at the post office. You pretend you didn't. You keep reading a letter you can't understand, holding it upside down. You flinch at thunder. You duck when someone drops a crate. You freeze when a child pops a toy balloon near your feet. You pretend it's fine. Everyone does. You drink more now. Coffee in the morning, whiskey at night, sometimes in reverse. You don't get drunk. You just try to get numb. Your uniform hangs in the closet. You took it off the day you got home and haven't touched it since. It smells like mould and memory. A button's missing. The sleeve's torn. There's blood near the collar. You don't know if it's yours. You're not going to check. You go to church. You sit near the back. The preacher talks about peace, about forgiveness. You watch the sunlight hit the pew in front of you and try not to think about the way light used to catch on bayonets. You fail. They invite you to speak, to stand up and say something about the war. You say you're not feeling well. That part is true. Sometimes you catch yourself staring at nothing. Just still, eyes locked on a field, a fence, a tree, looking for movement that isn't there, listening for sounds you hope don't come. You still know how many steps it takes to load a musket. You still know how many seconds a man can scream before his lungs stop. You try to work. On a farm. In a shop. In the factory with the others. You can't lift as much anymore. Your leg won't let you. You do what you can. You apologise for the rest. You stop applying after the third rejection. They don't want the one-legged veteran who can't stand loud noises. They want someone useful. Your family doesn't ask questions. They stopped after the first few got short answers. They mean well. You try to mean well back. You sit at dinner, nod at their stories, and try not to talk about the man who died choking on his own tongue while you held his jaw shut. Doesn't go with mashed potatoes. You see other men sometimes. From your unit. From a different one. You nod across the road. You don't wave. You don't speak. You don't need to. You both know what the silence means. They build monuments. Carve names. Raise flags. Hand out medals. You put yours in a drawer. It's shiny. Heavy. Cold. You hold it once. Then close the drawer again. They say you survived. That you're lucky. That you're one of the few who made it home. But surviving isn't the same as living. Not anymore. And that's it. Not the war. That ended years ago, officially. But the parts no one wrote down, the blisters, the amputations, the mildew in your coat, the sound of your tent mate coughing blood 2 feet away, those don't stop when the cannon fire does. They just get quieter, more private, until you start wondering if they ever happened at all. People will tell you what the war meant. They'll talk about bravery, honour, sacrifice. They'll say it was necessary, that it was tragic, that it was noble. You won't argue, you'll just nod. Because arguing takes energy, and you used all of yours staying alive. History moves on. Textbooks close. Memorials get polished twice a year. People stand in silence while a bugle plays. Then they go home, have lunch, and forget about the smell of burning wool. You remember. But not because you want to, because it's still there, under your skin, in your teeth, stitched into every part of you that wasn't shot off. So if anyone ever asks what it was like, what it really meant to live through the American Civil War, tell them this. You wouldn't last a day.